everybody was family. And now everybody's dead that I grew up with. Their families, their parents are dead.
It's heartbreaking because I knew the life that was in these walls, you know, and now there's no life in the walls.
Andre West grew up in this house in the 5th Ward, a historically black neighborhood in East Houston. For years, residents here suspected that the number of cancer cases was unusually high.
It's sad. This is Death Valley to me now, where it used to be we were so happy. Running around the yard, playing ball, kickball, riding in the little red wagon. We was happy. You got to find your own way, you know, because everybody's gone.
Last December, their worst fears were confirmed. A cancer cluster was discovered in their community. The state of Texas concluded that the 5th Ward and a nearby neighborhood called Kashmir Gardens had higher than expected rates of certain cancers. But they didn't explain why.
It's been 4 decades, 40 years. We have been suffering. We have lost loved ones. We have lost parents. We have lost friends. We have lost a lot.
Some residents here blame the cancers on decades of possible exposure to creosote, a likely human carcinogen. A nearby rail yard used the chemical mixture to preserve wood for almost 75 years.
I want to know, is it safe for me to come back to the neighborhood? Because I want to know, do I come back to die? Do I come back to get sick? And I have neighbors. We need to know what is their future, where do they stand?
Fault Lines travels to Houston, Texas to follow a community's search for answers and justice. Yale Babineaux was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in May of 2018.
So Benita called me checking on me. So, you know, I told him, you're starting to feel better.
He's had 9 chemotherapy treatments and reconstructive surgery on his esophagus. How would you describe the kind of pain that he's in right now?
Excruciating. That's all I can say. And when you sit up there and you hear a person say, come quick, I feel like I'm gonna die, I need you here with me, that puts a big old lump in your throat. And they're gonna continue to give you that Tylenol along with what you have.
Oriel has lived in Kashmir Gardens since he was a child.
Like I said, he was a police officer, so he still has that spunk in him. He just wants to be able to get back to his normal life. It's hard to see him like that. He just don't look like himself. And then I just started trying to make sure I see the man that I married, the person that I know. He wasn't no thin man. He had some weight on him. That was before the diagnosis.
Lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm. You would think he was 70 years old on that picture. But he's not, he's only 55. You can see his ribs, in other words, right, you know.
Yeah.
His dad had lung cancer. His cousin died from lung cancer. His uncles had throat cancer. And all of them lived right there, always at his mom's house right there on Lavender Street.
For years, residents pressured the state to look into why so many people in the community had cancer. In 2019, the Texas Public Health Department found elevated rates of esophagus, bronchus, larynx, and lung cancers in Kashmir Gardens in the 5th Ward.
A couple of nights ago, when I got in from the hospital, and I started counting the houses that the people, just on my block, that have cancer or have had cancer, you know, 8 people in one block, and, you know, including those that have died from cancer, you know. So, yeah, something is definitely wrong.
How many were you in this house?
8 of us. Well, 9 with my mom. It was 9.
Andre West grew up with 7 brothers and sisters on Lavender Street in the 5th Ward.
Yeah,
The same street where Sharonda and Oriel live.
Wonderful memories here. A lot of good memories here. A lot of good people in the community. a lot of love in the community, a lot of family, you know, family. Everybody was family. Bunch of kids. You could hear kids laughing, running, playing on the bicycles, in the wagons. Just fun. It got bad out there. Everybody started getting sick. This is my sister, Cynthia George, the one that's deceased with the lung cancer. This is Carolyn. Her and Cynthia are a year apart, 2 years apart. And she passed away with lung cancer also.
In 2015, Andre's eldest sister, Cynthia, died from lung cancer at 63 years old. 2 years later, her sister Carolyn also passed away from lung cancer.
My sisters wasn't smokers. And for them to get lung cancer, they wasn't smokers.
My sister, Cynthia, she retired from her job to find out the following year that she had lung cancer. Hardworking mother figure for us after my mother passed. My sister Carolyn, which was the next oldest to Cynthia, very hardworking, very loving mother and grandmother.
Andre's family moved to the 5th Ward in 1963. Her childhood home is a few hundred feet from a rail yard owned by railroad giant Union Pacific. From 1911 until 1984, railroad ties and telephone poles were preserved using creosote. Creosote is a mixture of hundreds of chemicals, many of them toxic. The fumes can irritate the skin and eyes and make breathing difficult.
The smell was real strong, irritates your throat, burns your eyes, smell like tar, and you definitely had to go inside. But going inside didn't help it. We live in a poverty-stricken neighborhood. You know, we don't have air conditions. We have little ceiling fans that's up in the attic that blew the cool air down into the house. Be gasping for air, couldn't hardly breathe. Like I said, I had boils to come up on my body, rashes. I have the marks from scratching.
Why do you think your family has been so affected by cancer?
Because of the creosote. Because of the creosote. Yeah. Because of it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. It's the creosote. It's the rail yard.
The rail yard stopped treating wood with creosote in 1984. But now the groundwater under more than 100 properties near the site is contaminated with chemicals found in creosote.
This is the actual site, but these are the 110 properties that have groundwater contamination underneath.
Dr. Lauren Hopkins is leading a community survey to learn more about the people within the cancer cluster. Of the 30 households her team has surveyed, 43% reported a cancer diagnosis. The city average is 6%. Were you able to determine precisely where the cancers in the cluster are located?
We know which census tracts are elevated, and the census tracts that are elevated out of the 10 are surrounding the Union Pacific Railroad site.
Do you think creosote contamination has anything to do with this cancer cluster?
I don't know what is causing the cancers. We do know that those are the kinds of cancers you would expect with exposure to those chemicals.
Or if you want the lemonade, I'll do the lemonade. I think because of all the chemicals that he's been living around, being a little boy, growing up, living around railroad tracks, the air, the pollutants, the water and stuff, all that had a lot to do with his cancer.
How does it feel now knowing that you spent a lot of your life growing up in an area where you're more likely to get cancer?
Terrified. Terrified. Because knowing what I know now, and if my mother would have known she probably wouldn't have never brought us here to live.
Sandra Edwards grew up on Lavender Street, next door to Andre. She's part of a group called Impact, which formed in 2016 to pressure the state to study the cancer rates in the community.
We feel good in here, man. It's cold out there tonight.
Impact is also demanding that Union Pacific, which owns the rail yard, address the pollution in the neighborhoods.
Union Pacific, you're really in a bind that you can't come out of, because I'm not going nowhere. We steady lose. How many times you think people gonna lose before they stand up to you? I am ready to fight, and I am gonna fight you till I go in the ground, till I'm dead. And y'all better hope I don't die no time soon.
Union Pacific made nearly $6 billion in profits in 2019. It's one of the biggest railroad companies in the world.
The creosote thing they cooked it in, straight down my street, across that track, straight ahead was where the thing was where they cooked it. So we know when it rained, it's all in our neighborhood. It's everywhere.
In January, Sandra spoke at the first public meeting about the cancer cluster since the study was released. It was organized by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who asked the state to study the cancer rates in Kashmir Gardens in the 5th Ward in early 2019.
I don't want to be full of bad news, but I do want to say that this is serious.
Some way or another, we all have been affected by this. In some way, lost someone, or someone got sick or something, but we have all been affected in some way or another by this. And if we don't stick together, we are not going to make it.
Why everybody is here, well-intentioned to help find out the answers. We've been waiting a long time.
Nationally renowned environmental activist Erin Brockovich was also there to support the community.
So tonight, where everyone is here, could I hear from you, are you frustrated? Are you getting answers? Who in this room has cancer or knows of someone that lives here that has cancer? This isn't normal. I don't know what else we have to do to hear and see you, and they need to know this.
The community wants Union Pacific to either clean the contaminated groundwater plume or move people out of the neighborhood.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I was diagnosed with stage 1 lung cancer in 2017. I've been treated, I'm in remission. I want to know if there's some kind of funding to help me move. I'm on the plume too. I'm just feet away from the plume.
Please do something. Help us. We are sitting on a time bomb.
I worked there in that creosote plant a number of years. I got lung cancer, I got prostate, and I got heart disease. Yes, sir.
A Union Pacific representative was at the town hall, but left before we could ask her any questions.
Hey, how are you? It's Jason Martlag with Fault Lines.
So we got her on the phone.
And we've just been to some of the streets near the site. Most of the houses are vacant. There's just a handful of people still there. You know, if they were talking to you, would you tell them it's still safe to live in these homes?
We have capped the site, we've removed dirt, we've made sure that there's no well water, so there's no way that there's no connection between impacted soil and water and residents in that neighborhood.
Once creosote sinks deep into the earth, it's extremely difficult to take out. Union Pacific is removing only what's closest to the surface, but leaving the rest behind.
One of the things that Union Pacific had proposed for the creosote, basically just wait and see, let Mother Nature do her thing.
Rodrigo Cantu is an environmental lawyer. He's advising Impact.
The chemicals in it can actually seep up through the soil, and they can come into the atmosphere, and if there's someone living above or recreating above or simply walking on their property, they may be breathing in those vapors. We know this is how the chemicals in creosote behave, and they haven't done the testing to see whether or not that mechanism is taking place.
According to state records, regulators have known about the contaminated groundwater since at least the 1980s. But residents we spoke with said they didn't hear about the contamination until decades later. The state environmental agency in charge of overseeing the site and the state health department both declined our interview requests.
Even though you were on a railroad track, y'all, it was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. It's just so much has changed. So much has changed. My father got sick at 80-something with cancer, bone cancer, and 2 months later he was dead. It made me so angry. I'm sorry. Everybody on Lavender Street, I know 5 or 6 families we watch just go. There's no way you don't know this. You cannot make me believe you don't know that you were killing people. They looked at it as a pro-black community. They didn't care. They just say, forgive them, let them die off.
Across the United States, communities of color are more likely to breathe polluted air than white ones. And black residents, in particular, are the most likely to live near polluting industries and toxic sites.
Why is it that contaminated sites are disproportionately found near communities of color?
The historical institutional racism that has gone on in this country that has led to sort of the limiting of where black and brown people can buy homes and live.
Stephen Lester is a toxicologist with nearly 40 years of experience helping people in contaminated communities find answers.
It's probably no coincidence that many of these communities, many of these cancer clusters that we see, many of the industrial clusters that exist in this country today happen to be around and in the midst of communities of color.
We tracked down some of the men who used to work in the creosote facility at that rail yard during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s.
How many of you have health problems that you think were caused by creosote?
I had a tumor, took out.
Tumor?
Yeah.
Lung cancer?
I'll find out on the 17th of this month whether I have prostate cancer or not.
So what was it like working there?
Terrible. Smell it when you get in, you smell it when you go back home with it.
Creosote was very strong. It would burn your skin, you know, in the summertime, you know. Yeah. It would be a burn on you if it hit your skin.
It would mix it. It would mix with the water, the drinking water. It would mix it with, every time you go by the water fountain and you drink the water, it's in the water.
It was real terrible, you know. The ground, when it would rain, you know, the ground, it would bubble. You know, just like it was, I don't know what, we never did know what it was. It was like gas. You know, it just bubbled all over the yard, you know.
We had crystals running down the side of the yard from one end of the yard to the other. And into the railroad tracks and into the neighborhoods back there where the houses were.
Did anyone ever complain, and what happened if you did?
No, I didn't. Well, nobody knew the danger that we was under because breathing this, inhaling it, no nothing.
No, we never did have.
No protective gear, no suits, no nothing.
No, because
for years and years.
I guess we just had to work, you know, to support our family, and so they didn't say nothing, and I guess we didn't even ask. We didn't know. We didn't ask no question, you know.
How many people here think the cancer cluster in this community was caused by creosote contamination?
Yeah, all of us. I do.
No doubt. How did you all react when you learned about the cancer cluster here?
Yes,
What were you thinking after that was announced?
Yeah, everything got answers. Everything added up.
Yeah.
Say the government announces they can't prove what's caused the higher rate of cancer here. What do you do next?
There's no way this whole neighborhood went through this and wasn't nothing else out there but the creosote. Really? I don't know, you're lying. If they come back and say that it's not that, you're lying. And you're not gonna tell my people that, and they're not gonna believe you.
The Texas Health Department could conduct an epidemiological study that could explain what's causing the higher cancer rates. But it hasn't yet decided if it will.
Will the people of the Fifth Ward of Kashmir Gardens ever find the answers they're looking for?
There's no clear way to distinguish what's causing it without investing a great deal of money, and government's not doing that. And then, of course, you have the corporate side of this, who's putting pressure on government to say, well, unless you're certain that these chemicals or these health outcomes are related to this chemical, then you can't take any action.
So it sounds like people are on their own.
Yes, unfortunately, people are on their own. And until there's a change in this country, and until people stand up and say enough, until people get involved and force government to address these questions, people are going to stay on their own.
Too hard living, but I'm afraid to die.
Hey, Miss D, how you doing, my baby?
Well.
Thank you, happy V-Day. Y'all know I was bull. I did this at work. I was a real chick. Yes, it helps!
The change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
You like, look, you like my post?
Oh, you said you put some love in that. You put some love. That is beautiful. We want them to put a cancer clinic out here. We want them to make amends for what they have done to this community. My objective and my goal is to get a cancer clinic put in Fifth Ward. These people were affected by them. They brought the cancer to them. They didn't go out and catch this. They didn't ask for this. It's only right for you to bring a center to them for them to get help. Y'all tired of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm tired of this. I ain't yeah, you know, this going on too long. So what we are going to do is show Union Pacific how we are feeling about living in this mess.
I don't live in this area anymore, but I came back to fight because this is a part of my humble beginning. And you never should forget your humble beginning.
And that's what my mom used to always say. When you can't go nowhere, you can always go home. But that's not home over there anymore. It's like a dead zone over there. It's a dead zone over there. And it breaks my heart, but it makes me angry.
It's time for them to make it right. Make it right with the people in Fifth Ward and Cashman Garden, Denver Harbor, and all these different places. It's time for them to shut up and put up.
Is the company doing enough to address your concerns?
They're not doing anything, sir. They got a hotline. They have a hotline. They don't even have enough compassion to talk one-on-one with the people. They give us a hotline.
Union Pacific didn't agree to our request for an on-camera interview. Instead, they sent a written statement saying in part, quote, "Decades of testing show there is no creosote pathway to reach property owners, and recent health studies lack scientific testing needed to make any firm conclusions about the cause of their medical conditions."
Creosote! Kill! Creosote! Kill!
Once everything comes out and creosote is the reason behind this, then they can see the toll that it's taken on me, and more so especially my husband, and how, you know, loss of income, increased medical bills, all the pain and suffering, you know, plans that we had to do things are just on hold right now.
Justice! Now! Justice! Now!
Are you optimistic that you'll ever get answers about what's causing the cancer?
Maybe once we start getting the ball rolling, then yes, eventually I'll get some answers. And I'll push until I get answers.
2 weeks after we met Sharonda and her husband, Oriel died from complications related to cancer. He was 55 years old. After Oriel died, Sharonda joined about 500 other residents of Kashmir Gardens in the Fifth Ward in a class action lawsuit against Union Pacific.
Something's gonna get better. This is just the beginning. I'm coming for Union Pacific. I'm gonna get them. Gonna get them.
What do you feel when you look out across this rail yard?
Just a lot of hurt and pain, a lot of death to the community. It's just senseless, uncalled for, you know. We matter. We mattered.